yeah. The class from this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea. I love the concept. I love everything about it. It's much needed. I love the comment that for those female out there as far as in just dealing with some of the spiritual needs and the mental needs of a people. Um, as far as in that spiritual, helping with that spiritual well-being and that spiritual aid. I think that's even from the standpoint of that this is not about telling people, hey, look, you need to be Jewish. It's just not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is these are the tools for all humanity to be able to change their lives. This is it. This is the Dr. Phil of 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 of, of of humanity. This is what you've been looking for. This is what you've been designing. This is what you need in order to not just say, hey, you know what, I want to be I want to change my whole dynamic, but rather that the dynamic can change you. It can change you. And if you tap into it, it can change you. And it's not something that is only secluded only for the Jews, but that this technology and this understanding about the understanding portion. Because when we talk about the mitzvot, you know, you either gonna hold to it or you're not. So it's there is a little bit of a difference there from my perception. But just the understanding, like when we talk about reincarnation, that's not just the Jews. It's not just for you. That this is a technology you can think real time. I can correct myself. I'm here to correct to make correction. Um, being kind has nothing to do with you. Man, it's about this is what we should be doing. This is what the creator designed for mankind to do. And so from that aspect, you basically you're training people how to be better humans. And so I love that.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, the people who left Mitzrayim were people that had a much bigger desire than the people who stayed, right? And it was a combination of people from Israel, and it was and other people, the mixed multitudes, right? So you have the mixed multitudes, and then you have Moshe Rabbeinu, and then you have the Israelites. Well, only a percentage of the Israelites left, and then the rest were mixed multitudes and Moshe, right? So the thing is saying that the message itself will be a combination of people who are part of the mixed multitudes and the people who are children of Israel, right? And so the question is, why is that the case? Why is that the scenario? Because we're not necessarily talking about like an ethnic dynamic or whatever. We're talking about specific souls that have a very high, desire to receive, to connect. And so the journey of life, they went through all these different things, like Jethro, right? Zipporah's father, he was like, he was into everything at a high level. Why? Because he's one of these souls, right, with a huge desire. And he gave birth to a woman who ended up being the vessel for, Moshe, who was the greatest prophet. So, anyways, the point is just saying that point is there, and I'm saying I think the frame that I hear you speaking from was like our particular job, right? Our particular job is to connect people who have these very big potentials to tools tools and strategies that are going to allow them to connect at a much higher level. And because of their position, they have the ability to affect other people connecting at a high level. So that's the part that you're saying with in terms of it's not limited to the Jewish people. But no, this is our job. The Jewish people, our job is to be a light to the nation. So what does it mean to be a light to the nations? It's being, in essence, a flashlight to the path on how to connect to God, right? That's the whole idea. The whole idea is that all the 70 nations are blessed through Abraham, right? He's the father of all 70 nations. So through Abraham, all the nations have a connection, right? And so when it comes to the other nations and their connections, our job as Israel is just basically to show them, like, you're holy. And, you should see yourself as holy, right? And so, everything that's going on right now is part of that process. So I'm saying me personally, right? A lot of other people are only focused specifically on people who have, identifiable mainstream Jewish, heritage, meaning their mother was identified as Jewish and their grandmother, the whole thing. And they're trying to bring those people back in the fold. And I think that's amazing, right? I think that's great. What my focus is on the people who have the biggest souls on planet Earth, right? Whether they're Asian, Indian, African, European, Russian, whatever the whole thing is, American, Israeli, the biggest souls in the world. And I want to be able to have a place where we can learn together and figure out strategies to remove pain and suffering for the whole world, right? And so that's the focus of the yeshiva that I launched, with the blessings of Rabbi Pinchas, Chief Rabbi Pinchas, and many other people. Everyone's in support of it, but I'm going in a very unique way, right? So it's not connected to people, whatever. Now within the yeshiva, we have two major programs, right? Two major concepts. One concept is connecting African Americans who went through the transatlantic slave trade with the Africans on the west of Africa who identify as Israelites in Jews, right? And they have, over a millennium of tradition, going back before, during even tracing all the way back to the times of the destruction of the temple, right? So so from that perspective, right? So from that perspective, we have to connect those people together. And not only do we have to connect those people together, we have to institutionalize their relationship because the United States has not been honest to African Americans, people who are descendants of chattel slavery, has not been honest with us about anything, really. A lot of things about the process of slavery, why they justified it, where these people came from, their relation, everything was like, mystery, right? But through technology and social media, we're able to make that connection. I was able to make that connection, right? Coming here to Israel, meeting people like Chief Rabbi Pinchas and other people, I was like, whoa. It's interesting too. Um, Almost 2 or 3 years before I met Rabbi Pinchas, I met Remy Alona, and he came here. Whatever, it was a whole big story. But the point is just saying that the point is just saying that. So that's one major project you're bringing that, and the main focus was that is really institutionalizing the idea, meaning having it put in schools, museums, everywhere. African American studies are taught, Jewish studies are taught, American studies, like really fighting for that positioning of the African American narrative to be expanded to this aspect as well. I'm not saying every African American is a descendant of one of these tribes. However, nevertheless, the descendants of these tribes' history should be a part of the African American narrative. And so that's the main focus, right? So we have all different types of programs and mediums and different ways to express that idea through publishing and text and curriculum and all types of things, right? So we have that. But the thing we were talking about earlier today, and the thing that we're leading with, right? Because we're talking about the learning institution that we have here, right? We have amazing students in Texas. We have amazing students in other parts of America. We have students, as we talk about, in Nigeria and India, Israel, right? And we're gonna expand, right? We're gonna continue to grow. But the point is saying that the idea that we're leading with is the idea of, and this is a very stark perspective, right? But it's a way of a holy war, right? And when I say holy war, meaning that there's no like violence or any of these things involved, but it's a war of ideas. And there's one idea that says that the world that we live in is the connection to the world that we live in, rather, is an expression of how well we assimilate into the society that we live in, right? So as much as we're statesmen or men of nobility or women of nobility, this is how our life is understood and the growth of who we are internally, right? So we use our, kind of like our free will to create this concept called like a spirit. And a spirit is a byproduct of, how we grow, right? We're talking about this, but we're going to say it again because this is the future. And so there's that idea, and that's pretty much the society that we live in, right? It's expressed differently now, right? Because you got this philosophical approach has now been mixed in with capitalism and work culture, right? And so you have that idea, right? But then the idea of the idea of the Jews is the idea that no, we're here in this world to correct our soul, right? And God provides a different season, a different expression every single day. The weather is somehow different. Every day is a different reality, but every day is a gift because it allows us to correct our soul. Because eventually we're going to go back to our Maker, right? And so the correction of soul and it reflects an elevation in the world to come and a preparation for the resurrection of the dead. And that's what we're in this process of this world, going through the challenges of this world with happiness because we know the full picture. We have to go through this because this is how we mature the soul. Like the person who's in the gym and screaming and in pain and sweating, but they know they're getting stronger. So the same approach to we have for working out, we have to have in life because we're in this world to get stronger and to correct ourselves for the next world. So that's what we're at. That's what we're dealing with, right? That's what we're dealing with. And so that perspective on life is what we're saying that, hey, you know what? Everything that exists in life, and that's why I've been focused on this idea so much of the idea of being a human, right? Because the who has the power in the world is a figment of imagination because other people created a matrix of what power is. They said this is this and this and this and this and this. If you have these things, you have power. But who said that those things were valid? Oh, we did. Oh, so you guys not only decided what's valuable, but you not only if you decided if you have these things are valuable, you decided what's valuable in itself, right? And so you guys, you said gold is valuable, silver is valuable, all these things that you were able to go and control. And then now we supposed to accept it and believe it. Okay, I don't have that much gold, right? I don't have that much silver. So I guess I'm not valuable. I guess I don't have things of value. Nope. Once we focus on the idea of being a human being, the basis of being a human being is in the neshama inside of a body. Once you accept that premise, now it's a negotiation because this spirit, this soul, this neshama that's inside of this goof, this body, has existed for many other lifetimes, and it's in this particular lifetime for a correction. So this correction I'm supposed to achieve in this lifetime the circumstances and the conditions that I'm faced with is all a part of that. So now I'm talking to this third party. You, the third party, wants to come along and create definitions around the things that God has put into my life to correct my skull, my soul. You are the Nachash. You are the serpent in the garden. You're here to tell me I'm this, I'm educated, I'm not educated. You're here to tell me I'm rich, I'm poor. You're here to tell me that, I'm beautiful, I'm not beautiful. I'm rich, all these different concepts, right? You're here to tell me that. You're here to tell me that on the from the moment I'm born. You're here to remove me from my humanness. Right? My humanness. I'm a human. No, you say, no, you're not a human. You're a tax bracket, your education level, your ethnicity, you are a status level, you're all these things. And then I said, but I read the Torah and God tells me that I'm mankind. I'm male, I'm female. Ish and Isha. Like that's what that Shum tells me. So like what am I supposed to work with? So that's the issue that I have. As an African American, as a black male, I get faced with this Torah that gives me the design of humanity. But then the world that I live in tells me a different narrative about who I am, in a different set of rules, in a different set of value points, all of which they dictate. So how do I reconcile that? So like for people listening, that's why it could sound like, well, oh, this guy sounds like, he's a little bit bittered by it. I am. They called me a black person. They called me the N word, and I'm talking about Negro, right? They told me I was less than the white person. That's what they told me. That's what they told my parents. That's what they told my grandparents, and because we're less than them, we should be okay with what we receive in their reality. We're not even fully American, right? So, like, how am I supposed to reconcile that when I'm inside of the Torah? And God's system says something totally different. And then they have a whole group of black leaders that never even question these guys. What authority do you have to even begin with? We can criticize the Palestinians, right? The Arabs, right? Because they didn't accept the property that was issued in 1948. And they said to the British and the United Nations, you guys don't have authority to issue our property. That's what their position was. Okay, fine. Let's give them that, right? Let's give them that. But they didn't experience hundreds of years of oppressive slavery to beat that strength out of them, right? They didn't go through that. So when we see these other groups around the world resisting and fighting and this, it's because they didn't go through slavery and didn't get beat every single day and watch the women, being abused in the worst way every day for decades, for centuries. They didn't see that. So they have the strength to resist. We don't have that strength to resist. Through the Torah, I have the strength to resist, right? Because it was beat out of my father, it was beat out of my grandfather, it was beat out of my great grand. They beat it out of them, right? Whether it was physically or psychologically, they beat out. So I'm dealing with that, right? I'm dealing with that situation. So now I'm into wisdom. I'm into expansion. This whole thing, and I realized, okay, well, the whole thing was a hoax to begin with. They never really had any power. They took an indenture. They took a group of people, and they isolated them from reality. For a few centuries, and they convinced them, of ideas. Okay, I get it. But now that I'm in the wisdom, and now that I see what's going on, I'm not angry at them. I'm just looking at how do I move forward, right? 2025 going into 2026. How do I move forward, right? And so that's the conversation and where we're going to and why we're learning the text and that's the basis of the movement, right? The basis of the movement is to say that if it doesn't, if a street was built on a particular area, like a road, a street, a highway, whatever, and the people who built that did not take into account my soul and what my soul's needs are, then I have to have a problem with the architecture or the urban planning that was done. Right? Because as a human being, my soul should be taken into account, and not just my soul, my neighbors and everyone else. This goes along with the food that we eat, the education that we receive at schools, the media that we watch that informs us about politics and social structures, all these things. Are these images good for my soul? Is this information good for my soul? Is this food that I'm digesting good for my soul? And I'm not talking about Jewish, non-Jewish, Israel, not Jewish. No, I'm just saying, period. Anyone who's concerned about their soul on planet Earth, and I would say that those people are at a very high level, because most people want to ignore it and block it out. Those people who have that issue about saying, hey, I'm concerned about my body, I'm concerned about my soul too. And those people who want knowledge on that, that's the job of the Jew, the Israelite, to inform them of the ways to protect their soul. Right? So when the book of Isaiah says that, there's going to be the nations of the world are going to say, like, look at the Jews, these things are working for them. Let's follow in their ways. Let's do like them. I'm paraphrasing. We can understand what's being said. One day the world's going to recognize that the soul is king. We live in a world where the soul is not king. The body is king. Because we're living in a Greek philosophy. And that's the fight. Right? We could learn as much of the Bible as we want. Great. Very nice. But the base war is accepting that I live in the world where the soul has to receive God's light in order to function, grow, and prosper. Versus I need to submit myself to the system and the organizational structure that I was born in. And as I excel in that, then I develop this idea of spirit. That's our enemy. That's the enemy of the Jew. And this is how we're able to go to wars. This is how racism is accepted. All these different things that we have, racism, prejudice, all these inequities, whatever term you want to go. The whole basis is like people don't want to accept. The basis is that we do not accept that the human being has a soul. And so therefore we live in a society that's focused on the external components. And these external components leaves us to a place where we judge each other, we fight each other, and we take each other's lives, and we justify it because of our ethnic identity and our nationalistic identity. This has nothing to do with the inner self. It's nothing to do with the neshama. And so that's what I'm saying as a rabbi, as a spiritual leader, as this person, I'm saying like, hey, we have to make this idea big. This is the main thing. If the leadership of Iran accepted the idea of the soul and their civilians that live in their country and the civilians around them, what's the purpose of a khalifa, of this idea? Why not just live with God? You don't have to be Jewish. You could live with God. You could pray. You could be in the covenant of Abraham. You do circumcision and you live righteously. Why do you have to subject people to your will? How does it help their soul? How is what you're doing help their soul? You know what their soul needs? You're saying your spiritual system, your religion is exactly what every human being needs? You're taking that position? Anyways, so let's learn a little bit. But this is my personal mission, and I'm dedicated to it, and I'm focused on it because I believe this is a big element to creating world peace in the world. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the gates of purity, Shari Kedusha. So it says, Vehine nefesh, ha tehurod shehi, ha peri kalula, right? So he says, now the pure soul, right? So we've been talking about the function of the soul and the aspects and the 613 expressions of the soul and how they go through the limbs and the organs and the veins and the whole thing. And so the whole physical makeup of the body is really just an expression of the soul. He says, now that the pure soul, which is compared to the fruit, consists of 613 organs and veins and resides within the 613 organs and veins of the pure soul, which is compared to the shell, the klipa covering the fruit. So he's saying that, like, you have the fruit, right? So there's fruits that you eat, like an orange, for example, right? If you just took an orange and bit it, it would be bitter. You'd be like, oh man, this is really bad, nasty, right? Okay, so that's if you bite it. So what if you peel it? If you peel it, then it's good, right? Sweet, nurturing. I'm not such an orange person. Oranges are very acidy for me, but in general, like oranges are great. I grew up loving orange juice. You know, I buy the commercials, everything, right? Vitamin C, and so that that component is there. But they're using this to understand the negative aspects that through our character, through our actions, these shells, these klipot that cover our souls, our soul's connection to the body, right? And he's saying he's comparing it to a fruit that, with the skin. He says, thus the organs of the pure soul reside in the organs of the impure soul. Right? So there's that duality, right? We talked about it. And the organs of the impure soul reside within the organs of the body. In order to exist, each of these two souls needs spiritual sustenance. However, the spiritual sustenance of the holy soul is drawn to it through the fulfillment of Hashem's Torah, which consists of 613 mitzvot, corresponding to the 613 organs of the soul. Thus, the Torah is called bread, lechem. As the verse says, come partake in my bread. Each of the 248 organs receives sustenance from the specific mitzvah that is related to that organ. However, if a Jew lacks the fulfillment of any mitzvah, the organ specific to that mitzvah will lack sustenance to draw down from the four letters of Hashem's name. So when that different part of the body has the spiritual sustenance up from God through our actions, like doing the mitzvahs, the name of God rests upon that part of the body. And he says this is the indication of the verse that says give life to all. He says all the mitzvahs depend on these four letters. Our sages of blessed memory said the letter Yud, the letter Hey, with the word my name, Shemi. He said the verse says, this is my name and this is my memorial. Zay Shemi, Veze Zacher. Sorry, so it says Veze Zacher. He says, you remember Ve Shemi. You remember my name. He says it has a numerical value of 365. He says the Vav, which is in the Vav and the Hey, which is the lower part. So you have the Yud and the Hey, which he's saying spells out this, brings us to this concept of, he says, my name, he says, this is my name and this is my memorial. So you have that, and then you have the other part, which is the Vav Hey, was coupled with the word my memory, Zacher, Zachari, is the same verse, the numerical value of has 248. He says, Ukemo, kin heme, manishtimakem arba'a. So he says, likewise, as mentioned above, the roots of the four elements of the soul are drawn down from these four letters, right? So the sustenance of each of these parts of the body comes from this relationship with the holy name of God, right? And so as we bring light, the name of God is able to rest there. And therefore, if a person totally lacks a specific mitzvah corresponding to the organ of his holy soul starves to death and departs, God forbid. So if a person, like, say, people don't like, they said like how Shabbat is connected to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. A person keeps Shabbat is as if they kept the whole entire Torah. And there's other mitzvahs like this, right? So when we don't do it, it's as if none of those parts. Why? How could it be like keeping all the parts of the Torah? Because that means that Shabbat feeds all the spiritual limbs and organs of the body. So when a person doesn't do that, keep Shabbat, he's bringing death to himself. In turn, when his holiness departs from him, and he says, when a person cuts himself off in that way, he's not receiving light. Eventually, his soul's going to leave. Why? Because the soul's not receiving. The soul starves to death when he wants to go. And so he says, in turn, when the holiness departs from him, the spirit of impurity from the four elements of the impure soul fills the void and becomes vested in it. This is the secret of the rabbinic dictum. Tarei did not become a metamorphosis until Jerusalem was destroyed. Whatever. So he's basically saying this guy, was it Tyree? Sounds very. Anyways, so you have Tyree who did not become something into. He said, thus the organ now receives a sustenance from the impure bread that was exiled from there. So he's saying, in essence, like when we talk about the Jewish people having nemesis, right, and having people and situations that go against us, is because the Shekhinah that is connected to the expression of the 613 idea as well becomes disconnected. And as it becomes disconnected, we experience this idea of choshek and tohovuhu, right? So we go in the reverse level. The forward level is ve'ahi or, vayomer Elohim ve'ahi or ve'ahor. That's going forward. Going backwards is ve'choshek tohovuhu. And so that dynamic of tohovuhu, of chaos and darkness, ve'choshek, the darkness and the chaos and this whole thing, is what happens whenever a Jew or the Jewish community steps away from God. And so he's using an example of how he's going to rise up enemies. Ve'zehu anayim harashayim bechaim kerurim emitim. So he says, in the meaning of the statement, if the wicked are considered to be dead during their lifetime, this is because the holy soul of the living God has withdrawn from them. So the people who are wicked, they don't even have the holy soul within them. Only the soul of the dark side. Rather, the death, which is called the ultimate source of impurity, rests upon them. So they carry the energy of darkness with them. Conversely, regarding a Jew who desists from the transgression of the 365 mitzvot, the sages state a person who desists from transgressing the negative mitzvahs is rewarded as if he performed the positive mitzvahs. So a person stays away from this, as the Torah says 365 times. It's almost he kept all the other 248. And in other words, by not transgressing, he empowers the spiritual sustenance that is drawn through the positive mitzvot, as mentioned above, to flow through the pipes, which are the 365 veins of the soul. Thus, in living, it's 248 organs. However, if he transgress any of them, the pipes specific to the transgressions become blocked, right? Like we talked yesterday. It's like, it's like the hair inside of the sink, right? You have the hair builds up in the sink and none of the water can get through. So what you got to do, you got to literally take apart the pipe and pull the hair out. But that's the tshuva process, it's pulling the hair out. But if you don't have that, everything gets blocked up. And that's what they're saying here, that when a person commits sins, they create a blockage in their spiritual pipeline from their spiritual soul to their physical body. However, if you transgress in any of them, the pipe specific to that transgression becomes blocked. And due to the contamination of the sustenance of the klipa, which adheres to the pipe, the walls of the pipe, when the pipes weather and the organs that receive from it weather with it. He said, this is so even if the life force is totally withdrawn from it. Similarly, one who lacks the positive mitzvahs, nevertheless, it becomes blemished. So that's a big deal. So he's saying this is how the destruction of the person happens. They start committing certain sins, and they start feeding the animal soul, right? They start feeding the animal soul. and they don't do the Torah. They don't keep the Torah, and so they're starving the spiritual soul. And so the animal soul becomes so strong and so dominant that now the light force of the Creator that would normally go to the positive, the holy aspect of the soul, is now blocked completely. And now the whole physical body becomes blocked. And this is the process of disconnection that leads to death. For people who are living wickedly, right? We're not talking about the righteous, right? Because everyone returns. Uvekin sarig ha'adam chafesh v'kol kechu alichaim kol. So he says, this being the case, every Jew should make an effort to fulfill as many of the 613 mitzvahs that he can. Furthermore, when he fulfills a mitzvah, he should have in mind to get rid of to in mind to rid the specific organ of his soul which correlates to the mitzvah of the droz of the klipa. He says which the droz, I'm not sure what droz is, daros, which the daros has been removed, the organ of the mitzvah may rest upon him. Okay, this is the secret of the verse. Their sins were upon their bones they because when they rise, the others fall. Likewise, when the opportunity to transgress comes about, he should restrain himself from doing it, and have in mind by doing so the dross in the specific vein of his soul, which correlates to that transgression, withdraws. Oh, so I guess dross means blockage. So it's a very interesting point. So the idea of repentance, right? What does repentance do? Repentance, in essence, removes that blockage, right? We said this earlier. Removes the blockage that's stopping the light to flow through and create circuitry, right? And so when we have the opportunity, like say a guy, I'm really go hard on these guys about looking at these women on Instagram, these different things, right? And how destructive it is and how it makes them into weak men, and it makes them in the world of fantasy, right? Where you're fantasizing, looking at things that you don't own, that you don't have any connection to. I'm not saying you own anybody, but I'm saying you have no connection to it. You didn't acquire, halakhically. And so you're looking at things that you have no share in. And so you're training the mind to think in fantasy, right? And this concept of thinking in fantasy is the mechanism that allows us as men to not make good decisions and not even ability to not trust our decisions. Because we're not in reality, we've been trained our mind to live in fantasy. So what he's saying here is that when a guy goes online and he says anything that comes up like that, I'm gonna close my eyes and not look. What he did was he corrected the damage that he created for himself by doing it. And that goes with any transgression that we have made. Once we decide not to do it, we have to have in mind, he's giving us huge codes right now. We have to have in mind that I've done this mistake before. I'm not doing it now. And by doing this, I'm correcting and removing the blockage in that part of their body, in the part of the body that's connected to that transgression, whether it's my eyeballs, my thinking process, my fingers scrolling, whatever. He says, likewise, when the opportunity to transgress comes about, he should restrain himself from doing it and have in mind that by doing so, the blockage in the specific vein of his soul, which correlates to that transgression, is withdrawn. With this, the blockage will be removed, and the spiritual influence which has drawn by way of that spiritual pipe will be able to flow again. And this is the way his soul becomes a seat and a vehicle for Hashem's light. So when we cleanse these parts of ourselves through correction, through changing our behavior, through seeing the mistake and being faced with the same temptation and doing it opposite, when we do that, we literally cleanse that part of ourselves. And he says, and this is the secret of the father of the chariot. All right, the marchava. So, anyways, so we'll stop here, because we're in it. We're in it. It's not like I don't want to start sections because we're in the stage of the Omer, right? Every day we're in the Omer. We're living in the Omer right now. We are our ancestors walking in the desert, and literally we're getting man every day. What does man mean? Man means that every stage of the journey, we had to let go of old belief systems. and we had to accept the new ones, which is God as our Savior, God as our Master, God as our Redeemer, God as our Healer. We had to accept that because it was just us in the desert and no provisions. And that's the case all the time. But the concealment of slavery or being indentured made us think our master had this power. So what we have to do, we have to challenge everything. Everything that the world has ever told us about itself, we have to challenge it. And we have to fight for our lives. Not that we're mad at anybody. We can't, it doesn't mean we can't love the beautiful things that were inspired from our culture in lieu of darkness, right? Like the Jubilee, the singing, the connection, the unity, the faith in God, the Amuna, all these things that we had to naturally have just to survive the oppression. We got to embrace those things. But we have to understand that that was a process of subjugation. And just because the white people want us to glorify it and make it like like they want to glorify our poverty and our struggle, because it fits into their narrative of the American dream. But as Israelites, as Jews, we have to look at it and say, hey, you know what? We get it, but we hold by the Torah. So your rules, we don't need your rules. We don't need your glorifications. We've been going through this for millennium. We've been in diaspora and we've acted wickedly. We've been desecrating God's name. So, anyways, any thoughts and responses to Rabbi Chaim Vital's statements or anything said?
Yes, I just have a quick question, Chief Rabbi. I wanted to know, how do you like balance, just your thought process and everything with being a Jew, and not just a Jew, but a chief rabbi, and knowing that your ancestors were subjugated to a lot of hardships and so forth, and like you said, due to a lot of the sin and the avaros that we experienced as a people, but also knowing that a part of the family in which um, we're a part of the family has been, subjugated by a particular group of people, being in the West, but another part of the family has almost been like kind of, embraced and nourished by the same. It's like, how do you really, like, balance those thoughts, or just, do you ever like think about that? That's my question.
Oh, see, Rabbi, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Chief Rabbi.
Oh, sorry about that. It was on mute. All right. So it's a very good question. And so it reminds me of a conversation I had with a rabbi named Tovia Singer that's here in Israel. And he's popular. He does a lot of anti-missionary stuff, Christian type of stuff, whatever. And we're talking about like a lot of the things that we've seen in things that we see in the Jewish community and things we've seen in the Jewish community. Like you see things like Jews today, playing a big part in working in the entertainment business, and there being issues of messages and ideas that are coming to Black people that are inspiring like murder, death, and killing, and that's a real thing, right? Or you see like you hear stories about Jewish people who owned slave ships, or Jewish people that own slaves in America, all these different types of things. And you say like, how do you reconcile that? And that's what I think, reason why I mentioned Tuvia is that Rabbi Singer is the fact that, when you look at the Jewish people, you have to see that like there's great aspects of us and there's very wicked aspects of us. There's been aspects when people in power have subjugated the masses, and have done horrific things to the masses, whether it's been whether it's been war against their brethren, or leading, astray through idolatry, and other witchcraft, right? And so I think that's the element of us as a collective people. And it's not to say that, African Americans, like, we just have this like clean slate, right? Like, what were we doing in Africa? What was going on? Rabbi, Demota talks about that there were, Igbo tribes that were big sellers of other their tribesmen into slavery. You know what I mean? So the consciousness and the punishment is always just, right? Because it only comes from the Creator. So yes, there's definitely Jewish brethren that are not doing righteous things. Some, are, brothers that are African American, brothers that are, Ashkenaz, brothers Sephardic, and these different things. And we're flawed people. We've been given a huge responsibility. But let's not think because the Jew who's in North America, who's abandoned his Judaism and is partnered up with his oppressor from Europe, he's not winning, right? The Jew's not winning unless he's able to dance with his tzitzit and his kippah and his tefillin and Eretz Israel and is proud to be a Jew. But if his name is Stephen or Bob or Jonathan or whatever, and he's married to a non-Jewish woman and he does no Torah in his life and nothing, he's a slave. He's a slave. He's not free. Okay, he has a Bentley. Sure, what, Jew's supposed to have a Bentley? A Jew's supposed to live in Beverly Hills? For what? What did you gain? You made a bunch of money. Great. You made $1 million a year, $2 million. All right. $10 million you made a year. Okay, now what? Oh, well, I gave some Jewish causes. We donated charity. All right, who told you that's what matters? Right? You can't pick and choose mitzvahs. So anyway, so the point is just saying that we are flawed people and we're given a huge responsibility. So when I look throughout history, I'm going to see Jews do all types of stuff then, now, and before. And that's just who we are as people. And that's why we've had punishments and exiles and all types of things because of our behavior. And no other nation has this issue because no other nation has this responsibility. No other nation has the responsibility of keeping a set of commandments. They can create it themselves and say, "Oh, well, we are the new people. We are the new holders, and the Jews don't have it anymore, and we are now. We've decided. Look, we even found it inside their text." You could do that, but the game has changed. You don't think the Jews will be like, "All right, cool. We had it. We messed it up. Y'all got it now." The Jews have no problem with that. If we could live regular like you guys, and not when I say you guys, I'm talking about the other nations. If we could live like you guys and not have this yoke of the Torah on us and everyone hating us and us bringing light everywhere and us being the party poopers of all the kafira and idol worship. Okay, fine. We would have no problem joining. I mean, I don't think anybody would. I even look at the black person. If you said, "Hey, if you could renounce blackness." If you renounce blackness, you never have to be subjugated to any of the things that come along with being black. Fools are out. They're out. Blackness, 24 hours out, right? So yeah, so it is what it is, and I think like sometimes like with certain communities, like say certain Hebrew Israelite communities, they reject a lot of the Ashkenaz Jews in America, and they say, oh well, you guys have done this, you guys have done that. All right, but look what we're doing. You know, oh, but we're doing it because we were subjugated. Okay, fine. I hear. I hear. I hear. We have no control. We're subjugated. But yeah, but like the point is saying, I agree with you. There's a lot of inequities. There's a lot of conversations to have, but it goes across the board, and unfortunately, it's part of the nation that we're a part of. It's everyone. There's Jews that are not good. There's wicked Jews out there. I mean, it is what it is. Like the Tanakh says it, and we got examples of it now. So. It is what it is. I just hope I'm not one of them.
You know, see, Rabbi, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and I also, I think that we all need to really have the mindset that we are all in a purification process. And I think that that's, and that's kind of leaning up to what the secret that we were just going over. That's what I got out of it. Was just this level of purification. And for some, and it's like if you go into a hospital, right? If you go into a hospital, you got people with a whole variety of different illnesses and sicknesses, right? Well, the regimen that is for one patient is different from another. Okay, but they both have to go through some type of regimen. Now, the idea is that with the Torah and with the mitzvot and with the wisdom of the sages, they are like giving us these these technologies in order to help purify us and align us correctly, like a chiropractor aligns, right? And when that happens, we're going through that process. Now, for other nations and other people groups, and even different sets of Jews and so forth, I think it behooves us to be able to empathize or to look at another man's burden, another man's struggle, another man's process, and and bless him for that process that we're able to see it real time and to understand it real time. And when we see that process of his purification, we look at ourselves and we say, man, I need to be purified in that way as well, or just looking at it and saying, man, that's his struggle, that's his, hold on a second. Saying that this is his struggle, and I can appreciate his struggle because we're not alone in all of this, and I think that that's the one thing that we all can say. It doesn't matter if you're extremely wealthy, it doesn't matter what color you are. I think each and every one of us has we're having to cope with living in this world. Everybody has some struggle that they're going through, and it doesn't really matter what that struggle is, but it is a struggle. And I think the dynamic is that what brings everything full circle is the fact that the mitzvot gives us the tools that we need in order to make it through this struggle and come out intact. It really allows us to really progress in this correction that we all have. The whole world is being corrected. Everybody is being corrected, and when even when you have a wealthy man, I imagine that some people have great wealth right now, and that could be their correction. As interesting as that sounds, what do you do with that type of wealth? Because they could have been extremely poor and just been a very nasty person. But now that you're extremely wealthy, are you going to still be that same extremely nasty person, or are you going to have an opportunity to show great kindness now? And so I think that just looking at and examining the fact that, I mean, everybody has a struggle, everybody has these problems, every community has these problems, and that we have the technology to help solve those problems and to help aid those spiritual problems. So that.
You're saying very good. Both of you guys, everyone's saying good. It just both of the points reminded me of a story my dad told me a long time ago when I was like very young, and my dad was in the insurance business, right? And he was building endowments, all types of things, but a big part of his business was life insurance. So when he started off in the insurance business, he was kind of like a life insurance agent, kind of like hustling around getting clients, trying to get commissions, this type of thing. And so he started working with certain celebrities. And one of his celebrities was a basketball player named Jamal Wilkes, who played for the Los Angeles Lakers. He may have played other places. And my dad told me a story about him that he heard from Jamal Wilkes. And so Jamal Wilkes told his dad about the situation that, like it was a situation with the Lakers and they had a chance to like win a championship the following year. And Jamal Wilkes was a big part of that. And it was time for him to renegotiate his contract. Anyways, so he went in front of the general manager. I don't know if it was Jerry Buss, who it was. But anyways, The owner was very comfortable with him, but because of the terms he wanted, he was very angry, and he was like, basically, he started calling him every name in the book, like in the negotiation. He was like reading the contract, and he was calling him the N word, everything. And Jamal Wilkes said he didn't say anything, and neither did his agent. They just sat there and let him scream in the room. And eventually he signed it. And so Jamal Wilkes told my dad, like, if he would have said anything, that would have been his excuse not to sign it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he was like, what? How you say this? Or blah, blah, blah. So my dad always said, he told me that story when I was young. Like, I was probably like 17 years old, 16, 17 years old. And he said, don't ever let anyone take you away from your money. You know, don't let anybody take you away from your money. And so the way I understand that now, right, as a much older man, is the idea of saying that there's always going to be wickedness around your destiny. Where you're supposed to go, there's going to be all types of situations around that, and because you always have to have that option to say no, or this isn't for me, or I quit, right? You got to have that option because that's the only way you can earn it, right? So you got to earn it. So there's going to be a world that yells the N word at me every single time I open my mouth and say the Torah, right? Because who am I, right, to teach the Torah, to guide humanity, to take the same position as Moses, as Yehoshua, as Abraham, as Isaac, Yaakov, as Joseph, right? Who am I? The world said I was a slave, right? They said I'm just a slave in America. I'm the N word. That's what I am. I'm not even fully human. So now I'm supposed to be a leader as it relates to God, the Creator. I'm supposed to bridge that gap, be a part of that. So who's going to be excited about that? Like, who's going to be excited about that? Like, where am I going to go? And there's like a bunch of people saying like, oh man, you know what? You're defying the social structure. I support that. I support the fact that you're defining the social structure. I support that. Yeah, you find people here and there, but in general, that's not fanfare. You're not going to win with that. Because Hashem, I'm gaining so much that Hashem has to create a reality that I have to negate the things that the other, say, rabbis get. The fanfare, this, all the things, right? I got to negate that because I get blessed with the truth. So nobody's trying to see me win, right? I'm having issues, my wife, the whole dynamic, right? Nobody's there trying to see me win. Me winning is a defying of reality, it's defying of the system, right? I'm supposed to struggle. They're supposed to have it easier. What do you mean I'm supposed to win? So there's no thing. But the point is, that has nothing to do with me collecting my wealth because my wealth comes from the Creator. Right? So I don't care how wicked you've been, how much you stole, what you did, what you killed. That's between you and God. I am building wealth for my future soul in the next world and my children and my wife and my grandchildren and future grandchildren, all these different people, right? So that's what I'm doing. But when you're winning, nobody is around. This guy, I tell you the story, this guy, Brian Turner, he was like a mentor of mine, in the business world for a little bit. Brian Turner's the guy who started a big record company, Priority Records, made some money, made a bunch of money off of gangster rap, basically, right? And then he went into film, and that's where I met him. I met him when he was in the film business. But anyways, long story short, we were talking about money and like putting things in the media. And he says like, there's two people that everyone hates. A really good looking person and a really rich person, right? If you were one of those two things, there's somebody out there there's people out there that just despise your existence. And he says, stay away from, people knowing how, much money you made or this, whatever. That was his advice type of thing. But the point is saying that when I look back on it, it's just like, for African American to be a leader with God, you're both of those things. You're rich and you're good looking. So, anyways, the point is, I'm just saying is, it's like there's no committee that's trying to see me win, right? There's not a black committee. A lot of the black Jews are like, bro, why you pushing so far? They didn't say that. They won't say that, right? But they didn't meet the Roth Berg, right? They didn't meet these characters. I didn't come in the way that they did. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't. People came, hey, they left Christianity. They want to go to a different religion. I never thought about no other religion. You know what I'm saying? Like my parents were Muslim. I mean, that was it. And then I come to the Kabbalah Center, and then the Rob's, it's like, yeah, we're moving pain and suffering and this and Kabbalah and Rav Ashlag and the Ari and all, and I'm like, geez, and it just even my family, my sister even converted. You know what I mean? So it affected us on a deep level. Now we understand why. Because our origins was Israel. Our origins was Hebrew and these things. So, anyways, with all that being said, I'm not. You can't. If you can't. If you're in it for truth, you're gonna have the similar experiences as David. Go ahead. You
All
gonna?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Before you go, I do want to bring you on a comment that you made earlier in class. Um, and it's actually a dynamic that me and my wife we use uh, with our children, with our local community, so forth. You said that you're looking for the biggest souls in the world. Not a, what garment they have on, or appearance, but rather souls. We use the because it does say, and it's like you set the table and you have the table there, and if someone wants to come and eat, they're more than welcome. If they choose not to, then that's okay. They don't have to sit at the table, but they got to
You
sit down and enjoy the full experience of the dining. I love that stuff.
a lot of what you're saying, we broke up, but I think what I did.
Okay. What I was saying, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, what I was saying was that we use a concept of the Shloka Maruk to talk about, the comment that you made, but that you're looking for the biggest souls in the world.
Yeah.
Um, no matter what they look like. Shloka Maruk, we set the table, and if they want to sit down and eat, they can come and eat a five course meal and really enjoy it. If they don't want to eat, they don't have to eat. But they got to know that they can't take a to-go box, because it's not that type of party. So, table, and those that want to sit down and eat, they're more than welcome. They can come and dine and use in the world.
Exactly. No, that's exactly the mindset. That's exactly the mindset, and that's where we're going, and that's the basis of the yeshiva. It's just basically to, like, we're just focused, on this idea of removing pain and suffering on all levels, and it's not a popular mission. It's not a mission that's going to get a lot of fanfare. And in fact, if you want a fanfare, you got to be a part of the confusion and the distraction. If you do that, you will become very famous very quickly and even make money and get all your bodily pleasures met. I'm in this whole thing for correction of the soul, right? I'm hoping that I could grow to the point that my soul is so corrected that it's only going to be reincarnated during the resurrection of the dead, right? That's my personal ambition, right? It's not a billion, all these different things. You can't take none of that billion with it. It's just paper. It's just exchanges, right? It's just keeping track of, goods and services exchange, right? That's all it is, currency. So that's not That's not even a part of this mission at all. Like there's no Bentley, there's no mansion, there's no poolside house or beach or any of these different things that are going to do anything for my soul. Like I am not, I do not receive that way, right? So for me, the goal is to go through the different experiences of life. Hopefully, God brings me situations of mercy and use those situations to, in a holy way, to transform my soul from selfishness to giving, right? And then from there, I would have done so much work in his lifetime through mercy, not through pain and suffering, through mercy, that my soul will rest with the Creator until it's time for the resurrection of all of humanity. And then my soul be resurrected. And that's my dream, right? That's my dream. My dream is not $1 billion companies, these other things. It's that. So the work that we're doing now is focused specifically on achieving that objective. And so Hashem has given me, visions and ideas to do things on a much bigger level and to focus on all of humanity with these missions and inspiring other Jews to focus on all of humanity. And that's part of the work. So that's where I'm at with the situation. And we'll see where it gets me. But anyways, we're back on tomorrow, Erev Shabbat, but we'll continue it. We finished section 1 or gate 1, right? We finished gate 1 of Rabbi Chaim Vital, the teachings of the Ari, which is the gates of holiness, which is which we're learning now is basically at this point we're learning about the body and the holiness of the bodiness in the soul and their relationship and our actions and how to cleanse it and how to strengthen it, right? And so cleansing is through tshuva and strengthening it is through the Torah and the mitzvot. So that's what we're dealing with right now and the intricacies of the body and how the body corresponds to different aspects, different mitzvot. And that's where we're at. We just want to be servants. At the end of the day, like none of this you can take with you. It doesn't matter. You just want to be a servant while you're here and grateful and do the work and be kind and you know what I mean? And live a good life, but that's all it's going to be. Baruch atah Adonai